Midnight came too soon. The old park was deserted, the air thick with the scent of damp grass and earth. A single lamppost flickered weakly near the entrance, casting eerie shadows across the pavement. Liam and I stood near the swings, our breaths visible in the cold night air. Footsteps echoed in the silence. Nathan emerged from the darkness, his hands casually in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "Right on time," he smirked, his gaze flicking between us. "I thought you'd run." Liam took a step forward. "What do you want, Nathan?" Nathan tilted his head, pretending to think. "Good question." My fingers curled into fists. "Just say it." He chuckled, taking a slow step toward me. "You, Ava." His voice was soft, almost gentle. "I want you to know the truth." A shiver ran down my spine. "What truth?" Nathan's smile widened. "The truth about you. About Liam. And about Emily." My pulse pounded in my ears. "What the hell are you talking about?" Nathan sighed, as if disappointed. "Did you really think I sent that message just for fun?"
No, Ava.
"I wanted you to know about yourself." A cold dread settled in my stomach. Liam's fists clenched. "Stop playing games." Nathan ignored him, his eyes locked onto mine. "Have you ever wondered why you feel such a strong connection to Emily?" I frowned. "What?" Nathan took another step closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because you and Emily are sisters." The world tilted beneath me. I stared at him, unable to process his words. "That's not. It's the truth," he interrupted. "Half-sisters." My knees nearly gave out. No, that was impossible. Liam stepped in front of me, his voice sharp. "You're lying." Nathan's gaze didn't waver. "You know I'm not." My breath came in shallow gasps. Why would you say this?" Nathan's smile faded. "Because I want you to know the truth. I want you to understand what happened before it's too late." Tears burned at the back of my eyes. "No. My parents." Nathan cut me off. "Your father is not who you think he is, Ava." A sickening realization hit me. Nathan knew everything. He had known for a long time. And he had been waiting for the perfect moment to break me. Liam's voice was low, dangerous. "Why tell us now?" Nathan exhaled, his expression unreadable. "To see if you can handle it." The silence was suffocating. Then Nathan chuckled, shaking his head. "Look at your face, Ava. Like your entire world just crumbled beneath you." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Nathan took a step back, stuffing his hands into his pockets. "This is just the beginning." And then just like that he walked away, leaving me standing there, my heart shattered into pieces. The club was dark, pulsing with heavy bass, the scent of sweat, alcohol, and something sweet lingering in the air. Bodies pressed against each other on the dance floor, lost in the rhythm, in the intoxication of the night. I should have left an hour ago. Maybe 2. But I wasn't ready to go home yet. Emily leaned against the bar beside me, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Her lips were slightly parted, flushed from the alcohol, her dark eyes shimmering under the neon lights. She was beautiful, too beautiful. I had always known that, but tonight, the thought clung to me like a drug I couldn't shake. "You're staring," she murmured, turning her head slightly, her gaze locking onto mine. My stomach tightened. I swallowed hard, trying to laugh it off. "You look," I hesitated, "different tonight." Emily tilted her head, amusement flickering across her features. "Different how?" I exhaled slowly, the room spinning slightly around me. Maybe I had drunk more than I thought. Just more. She arched a brow. "More." My mouth was dry. "Forget it." But she didn't. Instead, she moved closer, so close that I could feel the heat radiating from her skin. "You're drunk," she whispered, though there was no accusation in her tone. "So are you," I shot back. Emily smiled, slow and knowing. "Yeah." Her fingers brushed against mine, a ghost of a touch, and it sent a shiver down my spine. I should have pulled away. I should have walked out of there. But I didn't. The music swelled, the bass vibrating through my chest as she leaned in, her breath warm against my neck. "Let's get out of here." I nodded. We stumbled out into the cold night, the air biting against our skin. The streets were quieter than I expected, the city humming around us as we walked. Neither of us spoke, but the tension crackled between us, electric and undeniable. Emily grabbed my wrist suddenly, pulling me into a dark alleyway. My back hit the brick wall, my breath hitching in my throat. She was so close now, her body pressed against mine, her scent wrapping around me. "Ava," she murmured, her fingers trailing up my arm, leaving goosebumps in their wake. My heart pounded. "We shouldn't." She cut me off with a kiss. It was hungry, desperate, nothing like I had imagined it would be. My mind screamed at me to stop, to push her away, but my body betrayed me. I kissed her back, my hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer, drinking her in like she was the only thing keeping me alive. Her nails scraped down my back as she pressed me harder against the wall, her lips trailing down my jaw, my neck, setting my skin on fire. I gasped, my head falling back, giving her more access. She took it without hesitation, her teeth grazing my collarbone, making me shudder. "This is wrong," I managed to whisper, even as my hands roamed over her body, memorizing every curve, every dip. Emily only laughed softly, her breath tickling my skin. "Then stop me." But I didn't. We barely made it back to my apartment. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, she pushed me against it, her hands sliding under my shirt, her touch burning. I moaned, arching into her, needing more, needing everything. We stumbled into my bedroom, clothes disappearing between heated kisses and breathless laughter. She pushed me onto the bed, her body covering mine, her lips tracing a path down my stomach, making me writhe beneath her. "Emily," I gasped, my fingers gripping the sheets as she looked up at me, her eyes dark with desire. She smirked. "I love how you say my name." Then she ruined me. Time blurred. The only thing that existed was her hands, her mouth, the way she made me feel like I was coming undone piece by piece. When it was over, we lay tangled together in the dark, our breaths uneven, our bodies still humming from the aftershocks. Emily traced lazy circles on my bare skin, her fingers featherlight. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt regret. But all I felt was her. And I wasn't ready to let go. Morning light streamed through the curtains, casting a soft glow over the room. The scent of sex and sweat lingered in the air, mixing with the faint traces of Emily's perfume. I stirred, my body aching in the best way possible, my skin still buzzing from the night before. For a moment, I allowed myself to savor the warmth. The feeling of her tangled beside me, her bare leg draped over mine, her breath soft against my shoulder. But then reality crashed down on me like a tidal wave. My stomach twisted as I turned my head slightly, looking at her peaceful face. Her lips were slightly parted, her hair messy and wild against the pillow. She looked so innocent, so untainted by the weight of what we had done. But I knew better. We had crossed a line we could never uncross, betrayed the one person who trusted us both the most. I needed to leave. I needed to think. Carefully, I peeled myself away from her, sliding out from under the sheets. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. My heart pounded as I pulled on my clothes, my hands shaking as I reached for my phone. Dozens of missed calls from Lucas. My throat went dry. He must have been worried sick, wondering where Emily was, why she hadn't come home. What the hell had we done? I slipped out of the apartment, the cool morning air biting against my flushed skin as I walked aimlessly through the streets. My mind was a mess, tangled with guilt, shame, and something else I couldn't name. It wasn't regret. It should have been. But deep down, buried beneath the chaos, was the undeniable truth. I wanted her again. The thought made me sick. I found myself outside Lucas's apartment before I even realized where my feet had taken me. My heart hammered as I hesitated at the door, my fingers hovering over the handle. I couldn't face him. Not now. Not with the scent of her still clinging to my skin. Before I could turn away, the door swung open. Lucas stood there, his eyes red-rimmed, his face drawn. Relief washed over his features the moment he saw me. "Ava," he breathed, dragging me inside before I could protest. "Where the hell have you been? I've been calling you all night." I swallowed hard, avoiding his gaze. I hesitated, scrambling for an excuse, anything to explain why I had disappeared. I crashed at a friend's place. I wasn't feeling well. Lucas studied me, his brows knitting together. "Emily was out all night too. Did you see her?" My stomach dropped. I forced myself to shake my head. "No, Elite. Maybe she stayed with one of her friends. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I don't know. She wasn't answering my calls, and that's not like her. I was worried something happened. Something did happen. Something I could never tell him. I opened my mouth, desperate to say something to make it better, but then my phone buzzed. A single message flashed across the screen. I know what you did. My blood ran cold. The room suddenly felt suffocating. My fingers tightened around the phone as I read the words over and over, my heart pounding against my ribs. Lucas was still talking, but his voice was distant, drowned out by the deafening rush of blood in my ears. I forced myself to stay calm. It had to be a mistake. No one knew. No one could have known. Emily and I had been careful. There was no way. Another message appeared. Are you sure you want to marry her? A sharp breath left my lungs, panic clawing its way up my throat. I felt Lucas watching me, concern flickering across his face. Ava? Are you okay? I nodded stiffly, shoving my phone into my pocket before he could see the messages. Yeah, I croaked. Just work stuff. I needed to get out of there. Lucas reached for my hand, his touch warm, familiar. It made my stomach churn. If something's wrong, you can tell me. If only he knew. I forced a small smile. Infine. I just need some air. I left before he could ask anything else. The moment I stepped outside, I pulled out my phone again, my fingers trembling as I reread the messages. My mind raced with possibilities. Who could have sent them? Was it a prank? Someone from the club? But that didn't make sense. No one knew. No one except Emily and me. My phone buzzed again. I wonder what Lucas would say if he knew. I felt sick. Whoever this was, they weren't bluffing. They knew. And if they knew, it was only a matter of time before Lucas found out too. I needed to talk to Emily. Now. I hailed a cab, my heart hammering as I gave the driver her address. The ride felt endless, my mind spiraling into worst-case scenarios. If Lucas found out, it would destroy him. It would destroy everything. And yet a small, selfish part of me feared something else. If he knew, I would never get to have her again. That thought scared me more than anything. When I finally reached her apartment, I didn't bother knocking. I used the spare key she had given me years ago, back when we were just friends, when things were simple. The door swung open and I stepped inside, my breath catching at the sight before me. Emily was sitting on the couch, her legs curled beneath her, her phone in her hands. The moment she saw me, she stiffened, her eyes widening. Ava, she breathed, setting her phone down quickly, as if she had been caught doing something she shouldn't. I narrowed my eyes. What's going on? She hesitated. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone, showing her the messages. These. Her face paled. She reached for the device, scanning the words, her lips pressing into a thin line. She started. But then she stopped, her fingers tightening around the phone. Something was wrong. Emily. My voice was low, sharp. Do you know who sent these? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she exhaled slowly, setting my phone down on the coffee table before meeting my gaze. Ava, she said carefully. There's something I need to tell you. My stomach twisted. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear what she had to say. Emily's words hung heavy between us, thickening the air like a storm about to break. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared at her, my fingers tightening into fists at my sides. I didn't know what I expected her to say, but every possibility that ran through my mind terrified me. She hesitated, her tongue darting out to wet her lips. Ava, you need to listen to me, she said slowly, carefully, as if she was afraid I might shatter. I swallowed hard. Then talk. She let out a slow breath and ran a hand through her messy hair. Lucas, he doesn't love me. The word struck me like a slap. I blinked. What the hell are you talking about? Her fingers curled into the fabric of her sweater. He never has, she whispered. He only pushed me toward you. My stomach twisted violently. That's ridiculous. I shook my head, trying to make sense of it. Lucas and I have been best friends since we were kids. He loves you, Emily. He was worried sick when you didn't come home last night. That's just it, Ava, she cut in. It's not love. He's been setting us up from the start. I felt the ground shifting beneath me. My mind screamed at me to deny it, to push back, but deep down, Something about her words sent an icy dread crawling through my veins. I thought of the way Lucas had looked at me this morning, the way he had asked about Emily. His concern laced with something unreadable. I thought of the messages. I wonder what Lucas would say if he knew. My mouth was dry. Why would he do that? Emily hesitated. My phone buzzed. I flinched, heart hammering as I yanked it from my pocket. Another message. She's lying to you. A sharp breath left my lungs. My fingers tightened around the device. My head snapped up. My eyes locking onto Emily's. Who the hell is sending these? I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. Her lips parted. But before she could answer, the door burst open. Lucas stood in the doorway. His expression unreadable. My breath hitched. My stomach clenched in fear. Lucas, I rasped, shoving my phone into my pocket. What are you? His eyes flicked between us. His jaw was set, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his coat. So, he said coolly, stepping inside and shutting the door behind him. How long were you two going to keep this from me? My blood ran cold. Emily stiffened beside me. Lucas. Save it. He cut her off, his voice sharp. His eyes landed on me, dark and unreadable. Ava. My mouth was dry. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to meet his gaze. Lucas, you slept with her. It wasn't a question. His voice was calm, almost detached. That scared me more than if he had been screaming. I felt like my lungs were collapsing. Lucas, I didn't mean to? A humorless chuckle escaped him. He took a step closer, towering over me. What, Ava? You tripped and fell into her bed. Shame burned through me, but beneath it, something darker curled in my gut. Anger. Something about the way he was looking at me, like I had fallen into a trap, like I had played right into his hands. I took a step back. You set this up, didn't you? My voice was hoarse. His lips curled. I didn't make you fuck her, if that's what you're asking. My pulse roared in my ears. You knew. My voice was barely a whisper. You knew it would happen. He tilted his head, watching me carefully. I was counting on it. A chill ran down my spine. My fists clenched. Why? Lucas exhaled, his gaze flickering to Emily before settling back on me. His next words shattered the ground beneath me. Because you and Emily are siblings. Silence crashed over the room. Forgot how to breathe. The words echoed in my skull, over and over, but they didn't make sense. They couldn't. I took a step back, my body trembling.
No.
I croaked. That's not. Lucas pulled something from his pocket and tossed it onto the coffee table. A stack of papers. A birth certificate. My name. Emily's name. The same father. My vision blurred. My stomach twisted violently. No, I whispered. My hands were shaking. That's not possible. Lucas's eyes darkened. Our parents lied to us, Ava. Emily sucked in a sharp breath beside me, her face pale as death. You knew, she whispered, her voice breaking. Lucas's gaze didn't waver. For years. Bile rose in my throat. You let this happen. My voice was shaking. Lucas's expression didn't change. I wanted you to destroy yourself. My knees nearly buckled. The betrayal, the horror, it was too much. I felt sick. My hands curled into fists. Why? I choked out. Lucas stepped closer, his voice eerily calm. Because your father ruined my mother's life. He left her. He started a new family. Your family. His eyes were burning now, his rage barely restrained. I knew one day, I'd make you pay for it. I felt like I was drowning. Emily pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Oh my God. I turned to her, desperation clawing at my chest. Emily, we didn't know. Tears welled in her eyes. She stumbled backward, shaking her head. Ava, her voice cracked. I can't. Pain ripped through me. Lucas exhaled, his lips curling into something cruel. Game over. My world shattered. The room felt suffocating. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out every rational thought. The weight of Lucas's words settled in my chest, a suffocating pressure that made it impossible to breathe. My hands shook at my sides, my mind racing, searching for some kind of escape from the horror unraveling before me. Emily's face was pale, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Emily, please, I rasped, reaching out. She flinched. My stomach twisted into knots. Lucas let out a slow, satisfied breath, his arms crossing over his chest. This is the part where you fall apart, Ava, he said, voice dripping with amusement. Go on, cry. Scream. I want to see you break. Something inside me snapped. I turned to him, my body trembling, but not from fear. No, it was something else now. Something sharper. Something violent. You wanted revenge, I said, my voice hoarse. You wanted to destroy me. Lucas smirked. And it worked. I took a step toward him, my nails digging into my palms. You think this makes you strong? My voice was low, dangerous. You think this makes you better than him? His smirk faltered. I took another step. You spent your whole life waiting for this moment, setting me up like a fucking game piece. You could have told me the truth, but no, that wasn't enough for you. You wanted me to suffer. My voice cracked, but I kept going. You wanted to see me fall apart the way your mother did. You wanted to make me pay for something I didn't even know existed. Lucas's jaw tightened. You don't get to play the victim here, Ava. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I know. I fucked up. I did something I can never take back. But at least I didn't plan it. At least I didn't spend years plotting to ruin someone's life, just so I could watch them burn. His eyes darkened, but he didn't respond. Emily was still frozen in place, her breaths coming in short, shallow gasps. Her entire world had just been turned upside down, just like mine. But she wasn't the one Lucas was targeting. It was me. I turned to her, desperation clawing at my throat. Emily, we can get through this, I pleaded. Please. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She looked at me, her expression a mix of grief and something unreadable. Then she stepped back, and it felt like a knife straight through my chest. I shook my head. Emily, I need time, she whispered. I swallowed the lump in my throat, but before I could say anything else, she turned and walked out. The silence left behind was unbearable. Lucas exhaled, shaking his head. See? Now it's over. I stared at the door, my whole body numb, and then without thinking I swung. My fist connected with Lucas's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. Pain exploded through my knuckles, but I didn't care. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to make him feel even a fraction of what he had done to me. He caught himself, bringing a hand to his jaw, his eyes flashing with something close to surprise. Then he laughed. You've got some fight in you after all, he muttered, wiping the blood from his lip. Good. I clenched my fists, my whole body shaking. Stay the fuck away from me, Lucas, I spat. His smirk returned, but this time there was something hollow behind it. He took a step back, grabbing his coat. I got what I wanted, Ava. You're the one who has to live with it now. Then, he walked out, leaving me alone in the wreckage of everything I had ever known. Days passed in a blur. Emily wouldn't answer my calls. Lucas was nowhere to be found. I barely left my apartment, barely ate, barely slept. The weight of everything was crushing me from the inside out. I stared at my phone for what felt like the 100th time, debating whether to try one more time. But deep down I knew. She wasn't ready to hear from me. Maybe she never would be. A knock at the door startled me. My heart leapt into my throat. For a split second I hoped, prayed, it was Emily. But when I opened the door, my stomach dropped. Lucas leaned against the doorframe, looking completely unbothered, as if he hadn't just dismantled my entire life. I glared at him. What do you want? His smirk was lazy. You look like shit. I almost slammed the door in his face, but he held up a hand. Relax. I'm not here to gloat. Then why are you here? I snapped. His expression shifted. Just slightly. To give you something. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. I hesitated. What is that? He shrugged. Closure. I snatched it from his hand, my fingers trembling as I unfolded it. My eyes scanned the words inside, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a letter. From my father. My real father. Tears blurred my vision as I read the words. Words that should have been spoken years ago. Apologies. Regrets. Explanations. The truth about why he had left. About why he had kept me and Emily a secret from each other. By the time I reached the end, my hands were shaking. I looked up at Lucas, my vision still blurred. Why are you giving me this? His smirk had faded. For the first time in a long time, he looked tired. Because it's over, he said simply. You can hate me all you want. You should hate me. But at least now, you know the truth. I exhaled shakily, my grip tightening on the letter. And what about you? Do you feel better now? He let out a quiet chuckle. Not really. A heavy silence stretched between us. For years we had been best friends. And now we were something else entirely. Strangers. Enemies. Two people bound together by something far more twisted than either of us had ever realized. I stepped back. Goodbye, Lucas. He nodded once. Goodbye, Ava. And with that he was gone. Time didn't heal everything. But it dulled the edges. Emily and I didn't speak for months. I gave her space, not knowing if she would ever want me back in her life. I couldn't blame her if she didn't. But one day out of the blue she called. Her voice was quiet, hesitant. Can we talk? Tears welled in my eyes. Yeah, I whispered. I'd like that. It wasn't perfect. Never would be. But it was a start. As for Lucas, I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. Maybe it was better that way. Maybe some things were meant to stay buried. But no matter how much time passed, one thing would always remain true. I would never be the same again.